Where are we here? Some of you were very surprised and almost shocked, I want to say, when you realized where we stand with this right now. Some of you just thought it was science fiction, what I was talking about. But what is it? Where are we right now in terms of complexity of smart contracting? We're somewhere here, right? Somewhere between distributed autonomous business unit and organization. Yeah. So we walked through the DAO, and I wanted to make sure that I give you these use cases, because that's something that you can talk about in your presentations as well. And some of you, I think one team is already doing M&A automation, other folks are doing other automation projects. But when we look at this, guys, this is really getting to build a separate business unit. How are typical business units run? What do we typically want to see that you all know from VA? Some form of agency with limited liability. Yeah? There's an agency relationship, and it involves a limited liability entity. Yeah? And then the legal rules pertain to the relationship between the agents that act on behalf of the legal entity, the limited liability entity, and that's how we run businesses. Now, how does that work in code? It's code, guys. Code coordinating the agency relationship between the parties. That's what this is, the DAO. Yeah? The code is now coordinating the relationship between those people that are investing into the entity and where and how the money is allocated. Yeah? Now there's still agents that are providing inputs, yeah? But it's code. It's not, so people as agents making decisions and representing the entity through limited liability, state guarantees. Guys, here's the thing, okay? The state is taking over. The state is fulfilling the function of, here is an entity that we registered. We're guaranteeing the existence of that entity by way of registration. That's what the state is basically doing here, right? And then commerce centers around it as a legal fiction. You're not contracting with a person, you're contracting with a state-sponsored and state-registered entity. Code is doing all of this, guys. So talk about moving power away from government. Yeah? Government controls existing limited liability entities by way of oversight, regulation, everything that pertains to it. Code does the same thing, except that there is no real oversight right now. Yeah? It coordinates, it collects money, it acts as a vehicle with much more limited agency relationships.
So the backbone of enforcement right now is the worst case scenario, the strongest brute force of the government is to physically arrest someone and drag them into court for prosecution, or with subpoenas and the like, and that's just less and less possible in the coding universe.
What happens, guys, if something goes wrong with a limited liability entity deal? So the limited liability entity is signing a contract with another limited liability entity. If that contract is breached, what happens? What do you do? If you're the damaging, or the party that has damages in this particular scenario, what do you do?
File a suit.
You file a lawsuit, or there's arbitration, whatever, yeah, mediation and so forth. Yeah, but they're very clear centralized ways of handling these disputes. How do you do that if something goes wrong in your DAO? Well, one is the code one perspective on this is that the code provides legal solutions and certainty. Yeah? But what happens in the case of the DAO, where all of a sudden somebody comes in and siphons off $60 million that nobody can control? Can you go and sue somebody in court? Should you do that? how would the court have in personam jurisdiction? Which court would have in personam jurisdiction? This entity didn't exist anywhere physically. It exists in cyberspace, in code. So which court would be responsible for handling the dispute, the $60 million that sits in a subsidiary account? Tell me. What are we going to do? We're lawyers. We need to handle this with existing structures. Can we? Guys, we cannot. This is what Mr. Dorsch was saying. In personam jurisdiction doesn't work. Now, if you tell that one of my colleagues here who teaches federal courts, they will go above and beyond to explain to you that that statement is wrong. They'll get angry, possibly. Because, yeah, okay? So, but why is that statement arguably still correct?
What statement?
That in personam jurisdiction cannot exist. So technically, legally, yes, you might say in personam jurisdiction still exists, but practically, how? How could it possibly exist? Yeah? So technically, legally, the colleagues would be correct. Yeah? Somehow, that physical person exists, except that you don't know where that person is. And in this case, how do you sue the collective of people who've agreed by way of code to engage in a financial transaction? Yeah? Okay. Yeah.
So then it's interesting, while we're in the in-between time when people still figuring out the code, that like there was a Minnesota case just this last month of a guy trying to murder his wife via darknet, hire to kill stuff.
Isn't that your case? Oh, we have an expert on this. Unless you're bound by NDA.
No, it's all public.
You want to come up front and tell us?
About this case?
Come on.
Well, what about the case do you want to know?
Everything. So Mr. Lanterman is working actually as, you tell us what you do. I'll shut up now.
So I work as a computer forensic analyst. So what we do is we analyze laptops, computers, and all sorts of cases, be it criminal or civil. So these computers that we're all using, it's tracking everything that you do. It's tracking all your actions. And what we do is we kind of respond to incidents. So when there's a employee who leaves and goes and starts a competing company, we analyze their laptops to see if an hour before their exit interview they're uploading the secret sauce to Dropbox. But anyway, so there was this case out of Washington County. It's actually getting a lot of attention, and I'm actually going to be interviewed by NBC Dateline tomorrow about it. So this case, it was an apparent suicide. Apparent suicide. They went through with luminol, and they could tell that someone had tried to clean up the blood. Woman dead in her house. She's right-handed, but the gun was in her left hand. Lots of things that just don't make sense. So cops execute a search warrant on his house. They get all his phones. They get all of his computers, and it turns out that he was communicating with the dark web. And for those of you not familiar with the dark web, I think the best way to explain it is where you and I dwell is only about 17% of the internet. So things that you Google, that's only 17% of the internet. The other 83% or so, that's all not indexed. You need to know where to go to find it. It's basically used by criminals and the government. So I wish I had my presentation materials because it's amazing. You can buy drugs, you can buy credit cards, and it looks like a completely legitimate website. Like they have real guarantees. They guarantee their products. It's absolutely yeah, right. So what happened in this case was this defendant, his name is Stephen Allwine. He had been communicating with an organization on the dark web known as the Besa Mafia, and the Besa Mafia was basically hire a hitman service. And what they were doing was he would send them Bitcoin, and again you have to it was kind of a challenge for us to explain to a jury who might not be familiar with Bitcoin and blockchain and all of that. So he used a bunch of anonymizing services to hide his tracks, to hide his IP address so that it couldn't be traced, communicated with these hitmen for hire, and what he would do is he would tumble his Bitcoin. So tumbling Bitcoin means you basically put it into a bunch of different wallet addresses to make it even harder to hide, or harder to find. So what we were able to do was we were able to sort of piece together exactly what he did, how he did it, and we actually, we recovered a lot of information showing that he sent over, I think at the time that he was sending it, this was 2016, I think he sent more than $35,000 worth of Bitcoin to this place. So yeah, it was a very interesting case, and I think it goes to show how important it is to understand this technology, because even in ways that aren't traditionally, areas of law that are not traditionally, that don't traditionally intersect with code, it happens. Even in criminal cases where you think, oh, I'm never going to have to deal with code, you're going to have to deal with code.
So I'm curious, Sean, I heard one of the ways that they caught this guy in terms of the digital crimes of plotting the murder, and I'm curious to hear more from you. He was using the same username across multiple websites. So had he not done that, he would have been maybe would have gotten away with the digital hack. Isn't that right?
Yeah, there's parts about the surveillance that I am not at liberty to tell you.
Cool.
But I can tell you that he did use it. He did use the same username. His Dog Day God was his username, and he was on Reddit asking about how do I do this? How do I hide my Bitcoin? And what's funny, and I don't know, it's all public, the whole file is public, but what he did was he actually scammed himself out of $6,000 worth of Bitcoin and reported it to police. He did. Well, he wanted to see if it could be traced. He wanted to see if the cops could see who he's sending this stuff to. So he used a lot of anonymizing services, and guys like that, they always just think they're going to get away with it. But in the end, this website was really just a scam, and he got scammed out of $35,000 and decided to take matters into his own hands. So, yeah, that's a good one. And then the other one that I think would be good to cover is the Intoxilizer source code, because I think it shows just areas of law that you think don't have anything to do with code. It has everything to do with code. So yeah, that's the Allwine case. That's you'll see it. That one's been all over the media. Very interesting. A lot of technical issues that arose in that case, and it was a really fun one to work on.
Let's do that code in 4 weeks.
Let's do it. Yeah.
You and I will talk, and then we'll walk through it here together.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll share with you our report on that, and
Great.
and again that's criminal law. You don't think that you're going to come across code in criminal law necessarily, and it's there, and you have to understand it, and you have to interact with it, and you have to be able to explain it to a judge and a jury.
How did you dumb it down for the jury? Like how has like the easiest, like most layman's person?
Yeah.
You got it down to.
Yeah, it comes down to just a lot of analogies and having, I guess you'd say, kind of canned answers. When defense counsel would try to get too far into the technical weeds, I kind of want to roll it back. I don't want the jury getting confused about what Bitcoin is, what blockchain is, what Tor is. If you guys have heard of Tor, the onion router, it's a way to hide your IP address and make sure the government doesn't find you. It's a way to access the dark web. Yeah, that would be fun too. We should do a live demonstration of what the dark web actually looks like, because I think a lot of people no one's ever seen it. No one knows how to access this stuff, but I'd love to show you like a live tour of what that stuff looks like. So, any other questions about Allwine? Because that was just a very recent case from a couple weeks ago. It was a trial. And
I think I'm a bit confused because we were just talking about how we cannot trace when something bad happens in the DAO because, well, it's anonymous. So how in this case it wasn't? Well, it was, but how can you crack it?
Yeah, so in many situations, things that happen on the blockchain are anonymous. Okay, your wallet ID is basically an alphanumeric string of text that means, nothing to someone looking at it. It doesn't have your name, doesn't have your, social security number or something like that. I wouldn't consider it personally identifiable information. But the difference here in this case was that he had slipped up, and we were able to get his IP addresses. And the other difference is, it's only anonymous as far as what's out there in cyberspace. It's not anonymous as far as if I get your computer, I can tell exactly what you did, when you did it, how you did it. And it's different when I have the machines that you're using, to conduct your activities.
Just again, like an in personam kind of, I got your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Very physical.
Very physical,
enforcement.
right?
Perhaps a silly question, but when I hear dark web, I picture like the website equivalent of a haunted house. Like dark and scary and weird and, you know, upsetting. Does it just look like any other website?
So yes and no. So there are you know, maybe it's an oversimplification to say it's used by just the government and criminals. There are good uses for the dark web. I mean, I use things like Tor all the time. Well, yeah, a lot of these websites, I mean, they have drop-down menus. They have little, you know, made in America guarantees for your, you know, your black tar heroin. Like it's amazing, and they have real like checkouts and everything. So it's just a matter of knowing how to access it, knowing where to go. And I would not encourage anyone to try and find those sites, because you will, if you don't do it right, you will be on a list somewhere.
Guys, so we have an institutional responsibility to tell you not to do this. Okay? I want to be very clear about this, guys, because you don't want to be on a blacklist. Yeah, that's you don't want that.
Nope.
So please, guys, don't mess with this. Okay? The official position here is it exists. There's utility for some functions. These are not your functions. Yeah, let's be very clear about this, guys. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so Mr. Landemann, that's his job, to find people and to help people bring people to justice. Yeah. So forensic. Explain a little bit more what the job entails. What do you guys do?
Sure. So, you know, like I said, part of our job is reactive. So when there's an incident, like for example, an employee leaving a corporation, agency issues, criminal cases, I mean, you name it. It could be anything. It's all sorts of practice areas, patent law. We're basically the guys who go in and just put together the piece of what happened, responding to an incident. The other half is proactive security. So basically, I'll go into an organization, I'll say, here are your vulnerabilities, here's where your holes are, here's how you can get hacked, and here's how I'm going to tell you to prevent it, and I'll help you to make sure that you don't get your confidential health data or your confidential, you know, customer data stolen out from under you. But yeah, we respond to a bunch of hacking incidents, a lot of hacktivism stuff. So if you guys are familiar with what hacktivism is, basically they're hacker groups that want to, they hack organizations for some sort of cause. So that was the thing behind the Ashley Madison hack. I don't know if you guys heard about the Ashley Madison hack. So Ashley Madison, it's the Cheaters website. They, Cheaters website. The hackers had breached their systems, and they found out that most of the women on the website were actually bots that were just created. They're dummy fake accounts. And the hackers said, you know, you have X number of days to either fess up, just fess up. They weren't looking for money. They just said fess up to this. And instead they said, okay, fine. So they released the entire customer list, and, you know, I'm sure destroyed marriages and relationships and all that in the process. But anyway, as far as coding goes, just understand that yes, it's going to be, it absolutely no doubt will and has been making huge impacts on the legal community. But also understand that if you're thinking, oh, you know, coding's not going to be important in my practice area because I'm doing criminal law or I'm doing, you know, business litigation, you come across it every single day. There are all sorts of cases that implicate and involve code. So, very, very important, and that's why I'm thankful for this class.
Tell us just a little bit about cybersecurity and blockchain. You guys are still starting to dabble in it, right? There's not a full-on cybersecurity practice that involves blockchain technology.
No, there's not, and there really should be, because especially within the security realm and the proactive sorts of work that we do, blockchain could automate and fix a lot of the problems that are associated with typical security applications. Because what happens, perfect example, if we had blockchain for the big Target credit card breach, Target credit card breach wouldn't have happened. Absolutely would not have happened. What happened with the Target breach was you had a third-party vendor who was coming in to work on like their HVAC system. They introduced this this virus that affected all their systems. But what happened was they had a tool that's known as FireEye. FireEye is like a big security application. I work with it all the time, and what it's supposed to do is detect threats and say, nope, this cannot come into my network. It did not, it worked. The product worked, that security system worked. There was human error though, because the thing was beeping, it's buzzing, here's my alarm, here's my smoke detector, and it was ignored. With blockchain, you don't have to worry about the human element. There is no human element. There is no human mistakes that can be made, and it wouldn't have been 100% automated. Think of the difference would be, just for an analogy, if that other program is a smoke detector, blockchain would be like a fire suppression system. So,
A door lock,
yeah,
automatic door lock.
exactly. Yep. So anyway.
So when do you think this is coming? When do you think the cybersecurity industry will wake up and say, okay, we are at a point where we need to get more into the space and utilize the space?
I have my thoughts on that, and I work with a lot of people out in Silicon Valley, and these cybersecurity companies are making so much money right now that yes, I'm sure that they want to be at the cutting edge, some of them, but they just have so much capital, they're just making so much money that if their products is working, and that's one of the things with code, like if it works, you just don't touch it. I don't see a ton of incentive, at least on the part of some of these bigger security firms, to change their product and change their platform to adopt blockchain. Good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So we'll talk more when we get to the code.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, guys, I want to hear a little bit from each project what you're thinking right now. Guys, all of these contributions are really valuable. If this comes up in an interview, you can literally say, yes, we experimented in a group to try to find coding solutions for existing legal problems. It may not come up in the interviews that you have currently, yeah, but I already talked to some folks about moonlighting opportunities. Yeah, so Rubik's One was going to be here today. They had a conflict with San Francisco conferences. So, guys, there are more and more blockchain startups that are approaching me and asking for my students to provide input. I typically tell them that I'm not recommending for you guys to start a career 100% in a blockchain startup. There are some blockchain startups that pay really well, but it's still a very risky proposition. So, do we all understand what moonlighting is? What is moonlighting, Mr. Arabin?
You go to your job during the day, and then at night you just work on a project.
You're working two jobs, but the moonlighting job is the job you actually want, and the job that you should really work the hardest for, in essence. So, I'm not endorsing that. I'm not telling you to, if you have a full-time and effort clause, you need to fulfill that. And there's no question about it. But a lot of employers, they already know that after 5 o'clock, people can do pretty much what they want. So there will be moonlighting opportunities. So I've been approached by various startups to make introductions to my students. So guys, if you're thinking along those ways, I want you to come and talk to me. Yeah. There are some startups that literally they want a lawyer quote on their team who's been educated in blockchain. So they look to me to make recommendations with regard to students that have an interest and inclination and have shown the level of understanding that's required for those startups. And so one example just came on my desk, Rubik's One, where they're looking for somebody to become a quasi in-house legal counsel for blockchain, for the startup. Yeah, so they have huge exposure to the existing regulatory infrastructure, because they will be, in that case, a quasi-bank as an intermediary in the blockchain. So they need to comply with the existing brokerage, banking, and so forth regulations, right? They are literally, rather than going and hiring, they already have a firm that will remain unnamed. They're very unhappy with what they hear from these lawyers. They're so unhappy that they're saying, please, send us somebody who understands what's needed, who understands the existing regulatory infrastructure, but also understands blockchain technology and the startup business idea, and can basically become a liaison. Yeah. So when I remember when I showed you this slide when it said lawyers may not be necessary, that is just not true. Yeah. Just by way of those startups saying, well, no, we need somebody to help us who understands our business, but also understands the regulatory environment and how we are not in a position right now to understand what that means for this business. Yeah. So this is one concrete example where this is just not true. Yeah. You need to become experts in blockchain in this context, but also you need to understand the regulatory environment. Yeah. And they want that, guys. They're looking for that, and there will be more opportunities like that. I guarantee you. And partially, and here's the disruptive effect, because they're unhappy with what they hear from the 65 and older partners in the existing law firms. They want you guys, just to be clear, they'd rather deal with you, in this case as my students, because they want me to vouch for that, then hire a law firm, a big law firm, that gives them legal advice on the existing legal setup without understanding their business. Guys, right there's huge opportunities for you. Again, I'm not telling you to quit your jobs. If you don't have a job lined up, this may be a huge opportunity for you. Yeah? But it all depends also on networking, your personal networking, social media, exposure, recommendations, all that. Yeah? Right now, all I'm saying is talk to them, figure out if you have commonalities, and moonlight. That's my recommendation. It's hard, guys. You're going to be up till midnight, a lot. But you're creating opportunities for yourself in the future. So we talked about the current state of affairs. We talked about some of the legal issues that come with them. So we will talk much more about smart contracting, of course, as we talk about the EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine. But I want to really bring home this slide, guys, because right now, all you've in your teams, what you've done is you basically looked at existing process automation in law. A lot of what I heard from you guys does not require blockchain technology. Yeah? So you're literally just optimizing existing centralized legal processes. To get to the next level, you want to think about what you can build with smart contracting. Guys, I'm not judging you. What you want to do is there are optimization potentials here, but you can get to a higher level with smart contracting. Yeah? It would get a little more complex, but so whatever you are proposing is possible. But please, when you're proposing this, you need to I would encourage you to think about, why is blockchain technology needed for what we want to optimize? Because a lot of process automation can be done with centralized structures. Yeah? You really have to defend in your presentations the use of blockchain technology. Yeah, that really is at the core of this. Yeah? So don't just talk about process automation, talk about why is this technology needed, which necessitates that you actually understand what it does. Yeah? So for your presentations, one other aspect that you really want to defend is, it's one, legal problem, and two, coding optimization, coding optimizers with blockchain technology. Yeah? So 3, why blockchain? And then 4 would be, why is this coding optimization solution with blockchain technology, why is it preferable or better? Guys, does that make sense? I know I'm changing these terms on you, but I really want you to explain also why you're using blockchain technology. Yeah? So the coding solution shouldn't just be an automation element that saves time. There should also be an exploration as to why you want to use blockchain technology. Okay, so let's talk about smart contract use cases. And this will get you to start appreciating why it's not just an automation time saver, right? Why we can build bigger structures on this. So most of these on this slide are associated with financial solutions. So peer-to-peer insurance, trade finance, security issuances, syndicated loans, event-driven insurances, post-trade services, smart distributed power grid. This, by the way, there's a lot of jobs in you for you in this. Why am I saying this?
Partially it's government work, or it's going to need interfacing with the government a lot, and that's
Why?
Public infrastructure.
Completely overregulated. Yeah? So distributed smart power grids. Do we understand what people are thinking about in terms of blockchain technology for power allocations? What do people think? Mr. Evans?
I do not.
Anybody?
I mean, there's already a couple of like microgrid experiments out there. I mean, there's one in New York. What it is, it's a bunch of solar arrays that are linked to each other, and sort of through the blockchain, you can kind of divvy out, like if you need some, you can draw from someone else's array.
Correct. So who pays for what power at what point in time, and for power that people generate themselves? Yeah. So if you have a solar panel on your roof, and you're not using all the solar energy for your own house, you're now feeding your self-generated solar energy into the power grid. How do you get paid for your contribution to the power grid? That can be calculated via blockchain technology. Now turn this around. People don't have solar energy panels on their roofs, but they want to buy power from a diverse power source. They don't just want to go to the centralized power hub that sells them energy, but they want to figure out and talk to different power sources. Some may want to buy from solar energy grids, some may want to buy from the centralized solutions, and so forth. Yeah? And they do not want to pay processing charges. How do you do this? How do you use blockchain technology to pay for your power needs?
Well, I was just going to say that the transaction charges that you were talking about are completely irrelevant if something is self-executing. You just have to pay for the coding up front, but after that's done, those costs are
Does everybody follow this? What Ms. Huxtable was saying? Once it's set up and you're paying with cryptocurrencies for your power, the smart contract coordinates how much you receive in power and what payments are released based on the power consumption that you generated. Yeah? If you want to buy 50% of your energy as solar energy, the smart contract can very easily adapt that. You will pay a higher percentage for your 50% of solar energy uses, and the smart contract will automatically generate the payment based on your consumption parameters. It's completely secure, immutable, all on the blockchain, and there's zero transaction cost because you're using cryptocurrencies to make those payments. Yeah? Guys, that's coming. That is coming. I had multiple conversations with startups last week about this very scenario. However, it can only come if we have lawyers that understand what the technology does, how coding works, and how that intersects with consumer-facing regulation in the energy sector. Yeah. So This is one huge. So guys, in essence, what I'm trying to say is, for you guys, there are different avenues of success in applying your knowledge. One is to go completely off the grid and create something new with a startup that has nothing to do with the existing centralized power distribution. Another way is to simply work with existing companies as they embrace the technology to optimize their own internal infrastructure, which is happening right now every day. Yeah, the big power companies, the banks, they're all thinking about ways to use the technology to optimize their existing infrastructure. So there are really two avenues, and there's some hybrids in between. But you can tap really into both if you so choose. Okay, so digital right management and micropayments, another huge avenue, guys. Who is paying what for when, for whom, when, pertaining to royalties for music production? Yeah? So anything that pertains to payments pertaining to rights, associated with rights, for content origination and so forth, the sky's the limit really for what? All of this can be optimized in micropayments with blockchain technology. We can now calculate payments and fees that previous centralized systems were too cumbersome, too expensive to calculate. The administrative backlog was too large to actually facilitate this. With blockchain technology, we can now process and calculate micropayments that previous centralized systems could not process. And I know this is a little bit too abstract at this point, but rights management and micropayments, again, key element for lawyers. You need to understand which rights are associated with what payment obligations. This is what lawyers do, except that in this case, you would be doing it in a blockchain micropayment context, or payment context. So if you, next one, land registry. Guys, this screams lawyers. Yeah? Now in all the other ones that I showed you, insurance, loyalty and rewards, event-driven insurance, syndicated loans, lawyers are always involved in these. But it's the financial context. Yeah? Here, we're now talking about lawyers dealing with the regulatory environment pertaining to power distribution. Here we're talking about micropayments and rights, royalties, music rights, agency rights, anything that pertains to music and other digital rights management. Land registry, somebody talk to me about that, please. I told you this. The Recorder of Deeds office in Chicago, big red signs, we use blockchain technology. Nobody knows how. They probably aren't using it yet, but they're warming up the public for this. Yeah? So to undo a change that was manually incorrectly put on in the Recorder of Deeds office, it's a huge nightmare. It happens all the time in our centralized structures. People mess this up all the time. Some people argue that this is because of the lacking of expertise of the humans that are involved in the Recorder of Deeds office, who make typos and so forth. So the idea here is, guys, rights that pertain to land ownership can be held in land registry in the Recorder of Deeds offices by using blockchain technology. This is coming, guys. So anybody who practices real estate, who wants to practice real estate law, cannot get around this in the next 5 years. No way. Yeah, this is coming. That doesn't mean it's coming instantaneously, and it doesn't mean that the title companies that are facilitating all the backlog work, so the verification, the certification of loans, everything to do with title transfer. Doesn't mean they're going out of business immediately, but their business is substantially affected. which creates a huge opportunity for blockchain trained lawyers. So again, this is just giving you sort of an overview of what's coming in various areas. And by the way, this is not all of these areas. I want to argue, almost settled. It's almost a done deal. We're almost at the point where there is full agreement that blockchain will be used in this context, and smart contracting will be used. Is the land registry itself code as it pertains to the parcels, or are we simply using existing paper copies that are attached to the blockchain? What is it going to be? What is it right now? When we're using blockchain technology, what are they talking about? Nobody knows if they're actually using it, but what is their solution right now?
Just payment?
Are they actually coding the parcels of land? No. That's not what we're talking about, right? Well, all we're doing right now is we're taking the PDFs and other electronic documents, and we're basically saying we're no longer keeping centralized server-based copies of those, or even worse is paper copies in a vault type records, which they still have. But rather, we are now putting this on a blockchain by way of hash technology. So we're hashing the content of a given document, and we're adding it to the blockchain as a permanent record. That's what we're talking about right now. What you are talking about, coding it, so not using natural language, putting coding parameters on the blockchain that pertain to ownership rights in land. Nobody's talking about that. That's the next step. And why? Why is this the next step? What do we know about tokenization, guys? What is tokenization? Guys, tokenization is there are huge legal implications in that. You can build whole businesses on this. And people are building entire businesses on this. What does it mean to have a tokenized hard asset? So, this device has a value of maybe $5 or less. Group A could now split with Group B and C. As a matter of fact, all 6 groups could split the ownership rights that pertain to the underlying tokens that represent this clicker. Now transfer this idea to land. You no longer hold title to a piece of land or a condo, but rather you can own tokens that represent a fraction of the hard asset. So you own a condo in downtown Minneapolis. Currently, you need to own this free and clear, but with attachments / with bank loans, mortgages, and so forth. But you are owning this as one piece of property as recorded by the recorder of deeds. Yes? They are, yeah.
Isn't that what a timeshare is?
Okay. So think of, very good. Everybody understand what a timeshare is? Your fraction of ownership in the clicker. Your fraction of the condo that you live in. And you can trade it on a public, unfortunately still centralized exchange in crypto. That's what we're talking about. Yeah? Guys, this is coming for all assets. It's inevitable. Now, there's some assets that will be tokenized sooner than other assets, and there are huge problems in the existing business model with that. Huge problems. Every single one of the tokenization ICOs that I've seen, their market cap went down after the ICO. So you understand what that means. The public is basically not trusting that they can actually collateralize / tokenize these assets. So people are buying in, but then they're selling right away and the market capitalization goes down because they don't actually trust the underlying product. All 5 that I know of, LA Token, RayDAO, the Real, it happened to all of them. But regulatorily, you can do it. Yeah. Okay. So guys, long story short, all of the things that we're talking about necessitate lawyers that know coding, understand how tokenization, all the other models work, understand how the blockchain technology interacts, and with the necessity for legal solutions. This is existing regulatory infrastructure, but also intra-crypto solutions that people can work on. That's what I'm working on. Yeah, I'm no longer so interested in how does the existing regulatory infrastructure intersect with the technology. I know it doesn't work well enough. What I'm interested in is how do we create legal solutions that are actually working for the crypto evolution in the future. That's what I work on, and which is a different perspective on this. What you guys mostly work on, and I want you to work with me if you're so inclined, but what you guys can work on is right now helping existing crypto startups to intersect with existing regulatory needs. And it's so messy, there's so much work to be done that you can build a whole career on this. Now, ultimately, that career will lead into new legal solutions into crypto, in my estimation. Not now, but down the line, there's no way around it, in my estimation. So, sucks.
So it seems to me like you're using tokenization more or less for an investment standpoint, that it's a money-making venture. But if you were to tokenize a physical asset and only one person can use the asset at a time, like let's say I tokenize my car among 10 people and everybody wants it from 8 a.m. till 9 a.m. and then from 5 p.m. till 6 p.m., there are obviously massive logistical issues there, and there's certainly not.
And who handles those logistical issues?
Are you just gonna say lawyers?
I will. I will. It's how it is. Now the coders can deal with it. They can, yeah. But there's only so much that they will do. And then they're going to say to somebody, hey, I don't know what to do now. How would you organize this? And then the lawyer comes in. It's a little simplified, yeah, because it takes so many incremental steps to get there. But to me, that's part of what we're looking at right now.
I think there's 2 reasons why lawyers should be involved. I mean, for one, like the project will likely get shut down by the government in our current traditional legacy world. And 2, barring that kind of hard line, we need to make these things human in a more philosophically, morally robust, thoughtful way that not maybe the average coder can't philosophize to that degree.
Both of those elements come in. Guys, just to be clear, lawyers in many ways are the gatekeeper / bottleneck to creating solutions in the existing regulatory infrastructure. Lawyers cannot fulfill that role if they don't understand what the new business model does and how it is different, technologically different, inherently technologically different from the old business model. One of the best advices I can give you guys is to 1, figure out what does decentralization mean, and 2, what coding solutions implement decentralization. So, as I said before, it's probably needed to teach a whole class on what decentralization actually means, and to contrast it with centralized business approaches. The next thing is to figure out coding solutions that implement these new models. And that's what I want to talk about in our next 10, well, okay, we'll start. We probably shouldn't go into EVM because, well, Craig Marketero will start with this, and it's not directly relevant to your presentations. But, so we talked about the DAO. We all understand how the DAO works. We understand Vitalik's role in this. Okay, so we understand that we're talking really about the wisdom and potential of the group as a core solution for business problems. We talked about healthcare data. I really want to talk about smart property to give you a sense of what's coming. What is smart property? And it goes hand in hand with our tokenization discussion. So we know what a smart contract is. And we'll learn a lot more about smart contracting in the next 6 weeks. How does that translate to property, though? What is property? Same.
Well, for there to be a smart contract, there needs to be something that the blockchain can release once the contract has been performed. So it makes sense to have whatever it is that's going to be released there as the essence of the contract to be part of the blockchain or property, for example.
Okay, let's go. Smart contracts and smart property overlap. In what way?
The smart property is within the smart contract.
Yeah, the smart contract facilitates the use of the smart property. Yeah, that's really what we're talking about. What does that mean, Ms. Jones?
Yeah, well, isn't it essentially like the smart contract? You could send a transaction that yields ownership of a certain property, and in return receive a transaction like an email. So both of them are actually pretty revolutionary in that they remove the need for central authority that's saying who owns what.
So that's absolutely right. Let's put this into a real example. Our downtown condo, Minneapolis. Let's say it's tokenized and you own 70% of the tokens. So you own this piece. Or let's just say you're owning it under existing centralized land title registration authorities. You hold title free and clear, in fee simple, to that condo in downtown Minneapolis. What do you want to do with it? Well, one thing is you want to use and live there by yourself. Yeah? So once you own it free and clear, let's assume you don't owe the bank any mortgage money, you have ownership rights as it pertains to that, use rights as it pertains to this property. But when you're traveling or you're taking a job in wherever, you now have use rights to this property that typically would necessitate what in the existing centralized systems. You could rent it or sell it. For both of those solutions, what are your problems?
Checking out your potential renters.
Information asymmetries. I love the word. So what are your information asymmetries? You have limited liquidity. You need to hire an intermediary to help you rent it or sell it. Yeah? And that creates a huge transaction cost. So was it 6% for the broker? I mean, okay, so yeah, brokers have a role, but it's a pretty aggressive role in this whole thing. Yeah, so brokers both on the rental side and on the sales side, they take money out of your pocket. So now imagine a situation in which you do not want that intermediation. You want to use technology to link you up directly in a peer-to-peer framework with somebody who uses your ownership rights that pertain to that condo. What would be needed for that? So, right. So, okay, so just to be clear, today, if you live in Nigeria and you're trying to have somebody rent your condo downtown Minneapolis, what is needed? You need the broker to find you the right person, open the apartment, and coordinate all the ins and outs for that. Yeah? How can code do this?
I was going to say securitization, but that's probably not right.
Well, that's ownership rights as it pertains to it, but we're now talking about use rights.
It's not hard to imagine an upgrader at the next evolutionary step beyond Airbnb, but for rental and ownership. And there could be a reputation element of like, I need someone who has a 5-star rating from the last 3 places they've lived.
Okay, we don't even want to go to Samata at this point. You're absolutely right. That's the next step, right? That's why Samata it doesn't work without it, really. But we're not there yet. Yeah? So first we need to figure out how does the code actually coordinate the release of the ownership right that pertains to the property. Yeah? So smart property we can really think about it, properties whose ownership is controlled by the smart contract. Yeah? So the smart contract, this is what Mr. Singh and I talked about, is coordinating who can use the property when and how in what fashion. Now, ultimately, you need, as Mr. Dash says, you need a reputation verification solution to facilitate, as one parameter in the smart contract, to facilitate the owner understanding who is using it under what parameters pertaining to what reputation stakes. Yeah, we don't have that yet. Yeah, that doesn't exist right now. We need that though. There's no way around it really. Yeah? So unless you go through centralized systems, which we are moving away from. Okay, so guys, this is very, very, very closely connected to the Internet of Things. Why am I saying this? The smart contract alone cannot coordinate the ownership control rights to property. There is an Internet of Things element that is inevitable in this. What is that?
Someone's got to be there to physically unlock the door. Someone's got to clean the place. Someone's got to manage.
Exactly. So, but let's just look at the door opening alone. How can the smart contract facilitate the ownership right unlocking of the place pertaining to that hard asset of the property?
Could you have the entire security system essentially on the blockchain? The person who has the rights to it, but then you'll be granted access, say, through an eye scanner, thumbprint, or something along those lines.
You don't even need that. You don't even need that. You just need the smart contract. So here's the thing, guys. Just think of it this way. Code is coordinating the relationship between the quote-unquote renter and the property owner. If you fulfill the coded parameters, the smart contract, by way through the Internet of Things, will automatically release. So you have to really think of it this way. You're coming with your cell phone that has the smart contract in it, and you release the funding, and as you release the funding, the cell phone automatically opens, like a hotel key card, opens the property for you as you're arriving. But only if the parameters of the smart contract pertaining to the use rights of the property have been fulfilled. So in that sense, the smart contracts coordinate by code the relationship between the renter and the landlord, the tenant and the landlord. And the Internet of Things interacts with the smart contract to facilitate that interaction. And the sky's the limit. Yeah? How much electricity are you using? When are the lights going on? Everything can be coordinated that way. One thing that we don't have, this is something that we at Samata right now working on, is how do you ensure that all those IoT devices function within the evolving parameters that are being fed into them from the smart contracts? In my estimation, no way around reputation verification of those smart devices. We're not there yet. Yeah, this is all conceptual pieces that are being worked on. But so the essence of the smart property context is smart contracting, cryptocurrency, zero transaction cost, information asymmetry minimization, plus IoT, smart contract synchronization. That's what we're talking about. All of this require legal input. You cannot build this without lawyers facilitating the framework for this. Guys, this has nothing, this is intra-technology to facilitate it, but also extra technology in the sense of existing regulatory infrastructure. Guys, as lawyers, we still have a monopoly based on our knowledge of the regulatory infrastructure as it interacts with smart property. Yeah. Okay. I know we're at the time mark now. So thank you for your attention. Next session, please, guys, think very, very carefully about coding solutions, but why blockchain? Yeah. Don't just automate with coding. Use the technology. Yeah. So we'll do 20 minutes each for 2 hours next week. Thanks for your attention.